Friends, you must have seen the very inspiring and spectacular Somnath Swabhiman Parv that Prime Minister Narendra Modi inaugurated, led, and concluded. I think in the rise of India as a civilizational state, this Somnath Swabhiman Parv, this commemoration, this remembrance, is a unique, historical, and deeply symbolic moment for us. Prime Minister Modi drew our attention to Somnath as the eternal symbol of our faith in ourselves and in our future as a civilization. And in his writings, very movingly, he has spoken about how Somnath, after 100 destructions, was rebuilt again. That Somnath stood as a spirit, as a symbol of resilience and of resurgence and regeneration. It was a symbol of how the Indian spirit, the Bharatiya spirit, the civilizational essence of India could never be crushed. It always rose up and it resisted and then spread out again across the world. I think in the present context, when we see India's civilizational rise, when we speak about Atmanirbharta, when we speak about resilience, when we speak about taking challenges head on, the Somnath Swabhiman Parv, Somnath as a symbol, appears differently, and it acquires a new significance. Friends, that Somnath needs to be reconstructed, resurrected. I don't want to use the word resurrected, but reconstructed was something that was first mooted in the early years by K.M. Munshi, the founder of Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan, one of the tallest intellectuals of modern India, a man of many parts, a polyglot, a polymath, a deeply thinking political leader, an extremely close confidant of Sardar Patel and Mahatma Gandhi, and someone who was a student of Sri Aurobindo in Baroda when Sri Aurobindo lived in Baroda and taught at the Baroda College and acted as the secretary of the Maharaja of Baroda, Sayajirao Gaikwad. And it was in the pages of his book Somnath, the Shrine Eternal, that K.M. Munshi first wrote Jaya Somnath. And Jaya Somnath was a novel dedicated to the resilient spirit of Somnath. It spoke about how Muhammad Ghazni, the marauder, the destroyer, the conqueror, basically the looter who came from Ghazni and destroyed Somnath 1,000 years ago. Prime Minister Modi reminded us in January that 2026 marks the 1,000th year of the first attack on Somnath by Muhammad Ghazni. And there are left historians who will justify Muhammad Ghazni as someone extremely keen on trying to understand Indian and Hindu culture. The left historians have always tried to justify the marauding acts, the destructions undertaken by Muhammad Ghazni, but that's a different matter. This was the 1,000th year. 2026 marks the 1,000th year of the first attack on Somnath. Prime Minister Modi also reminded us just a few days ago through his column on Somnath and through his presence in the Somnath temple precincts and through his address, that this year also marks the 75th year of the consecration of the Prana Pratishtha of the reconstructed Somnath temple. That was done, the Pran Pratishtha was done by Dr. Rajendra Prasad in his presence, then President of India, in May 1951 against huge opposition from Jawaharlal Nehru, the first Prime Minister of India. In Jaya Somnath, very quickly, Munshi's novel Jaya Somnath very quickly became extremely popular all over Gujarat. And all over the country, translations were made, and it created a public mood, a public demand, a public movement towards the need for reconstruction of Somnath as a symbol of our spiritual, cultural heritage, as one of the centers of the faith, the Sanatani, the Hindu faith that was destroyed in the past, needed to be reconstructed in free and independent India. This was a movement that started growing after people read, and in Gujarat it became hugely popular after Munshi's novel Jaya Somnath was published. And very interestingly, Munshi says he wrote Jai Somnath in Pahalgam in Kashmir, on the bank of the lake, Sheshnak Lake. And he was inspired and he kept writing and he completed the novel there. So this is a very esoteric, a very interesting link, that Somnath's reconstruction, the popularization of that imagination was first, in a sense, put on paper in Kashmir, in Pahalgam. And Munshi very movingly describes Somnath. He says in his later book, Somnath, the Shrine Eternal, he says, Somnath was the shrine beloved of India. In its worship, she found ancient glory and unending inspiration. In maintaining it with magnificence, she felt a throbbing zeal to maintain the core of her faith, tradition and collective greatness. An ancient race subconsciously felt that it was Somnath which connected it with the past and the present. It was the shrine beloved of India, Munshi says. It was not just a localized phenomenon. Somnath, people across Bharat, across civilizational Bharat, undivided Bharat, went on a pilgrimage to Somnath. An ancient race felt that it was Somnath which connected it with the past and the present. It was the eternal symbol of its faith in itself and its future. As often the shrine was destroyed, the urge to restore it sprang up more vividly in its heart. This is what Munshi writes. And he says that, every time this was destroyed, it was again reconstructed. And we have a link, we have a historic link to this. We see Swami Vivekananda also referring to Somnath's spirit of resilience and resurgence. Please remember that Swami Vivekananda visited, traveled all across the country, all across India as a Parivrajak. And around 1890, 1891, he visited Kathiawar, Saurashtra and that region. He was also joined for a while by Swami Akhandanandaji. And Swamiji witnessed, Swami Vivekananda saw for himself the ruins, the kind of destruction that Somnath was subjected to, and he saw the ruins there. In 1897, after becoming famous, after his famous address to the World Parliament of Religion, once he came back to India, his speeches, and began his speeches from Colombo to Almora. 1897 in Madras, then Madras in Chennai, in his famous speech, in his famous address, The Future of India, Swamiji refers to that. He refers to Somnath, a pointed reference, and he speaks about how our strength, the strength of our national life, lives in our religion, in our spirituality, and how our forefathers, despite tremendous challenges, held on to that essence, to that core. And he says, that is the life of our race and that must be strengthened. You have withstood the shocks of centuries simply because you took great care of it, of this core, our religious, our dharmic, our adhyatmic, our spiritual core was taken care of. You have withstood the shocks of centuries simply because you took great care of it. You sacrificed everything else for it. Your forefathers underwent everything boldly, even death itself, but preserved their religion. Temple after temple was broken down by foreign conquerors, but no sooner had the wave passed that the spire of the temple rose up again. And he says, Somnath of Gujarat will teach you volumes of wisdom, will give you a keener insight into the history of the race than any amount of books. Mark how these temples bear the marks of 100 attacks and 100 regenerations, continuously destroyed and continually springing up out of the ruins, rejuvenated and strong as ever. That is the national mind, that is the national life current. Follow it and it leads to glory. He essentially spoke about the resilience. He spoke about this innate quality of resurgence that civilizational India possessed. And I think that link was very, very deeply, very comprehensively made by Prime Minister Narendra Modi when he spoke at the Somnath Swabhiman Parv. Now friends, we should also remember that Sardar Patel also was one of the moving, and Prime Minister Modi mentioned Sardar Patel, paid tribute to him. He was one of the key figures. He was one of the key figures, one of the moving figures behind the reconstruction of Somnath, and he gave all out support to it. And please let us remember that just like the Ram Mandir in Ayodhya was an entirely public affair, no government funds were used. For Somnath too, that similar Somnath too took a reconstruction of Somnath took a similar approach. No government funds were utilized. No government funds were put into the reconstruction of the Somnath temple, though Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru tried to prove it otherwise. Sardar Patel, Mahatma Gandhi, K. Munshi, Raj Pramukh, Jam Saheb Digvijay Singh, and all others were extremely clear about it, that the public had to support this endeavor of reconstructing Somnath. And Sardar Patel was very clear, Munshi writes, that Sardar saw that we would never genuinely feel that freedom had come, nor develop faith in our future unless Somnath was restored. We would never genuinely feel that freedom had come, nor develop faith in our future unless Somnath was restored. That restoration had a deep symbolism. To see it restored would make you feel that you are free, that we are free, and that we have a future. A temple which was destroyed 100 times and rebuilt 100 times. You see, I think there's a deep symbolism in that perception that Sardar Patel said, that Sardar Patel had and expressed. And in a letter he wrote to K. Munshi sometime in end of February 1950, he said, I have received the photographs of the architectural designs and plan of Somnath temple that you have sent me. I shall arrange to send donations for the Somnath Trust to its secretary, but the work must go on in full speed. He was very keen that the work must continue in full speed and be concluded, so that the edifice of a reconstructed Somnath is there visible before free India. Now friends, I had told you that obviously K. M. Munshi, Dr. Rajendra Prasad, and this entire effort was opposed by Nehru. And K. M. Munshi's famous retort to Nehru, his letter, I'll read a portion of that later. And Dr. Rajendra Prasad showed that unshakable, unbendable will when he went and participated in the Pran Pratishtha of the Somnath temple in May 1951, despite huge opposition from Nehru. And Nehru was very peculiar in the language that he used, especially when it concerned Hindu symbols, when it concerned Hindu places of worship and Hindu faith. You know, he says he denigrated Somnath's construction as pompous ceremony, and repeatedly wrote on how worried he was and how it would injure us abroad and even in India. He was concerned about India's international image. He must have got a few letters from abroad saying, how is India, the new government of India, supporting this? He was very concerned about what people abroad thought, and therefore Somnath Pran Pratishtha should not take place. And he kept insisting that it was not a government function, that the government was not involved, which was very clear in any case. People all across the country knew that the government was not involved, that it was not a government program, that the government did not fund Somnath's reconstruction. It was well known, but Nehru kept harping on it, like as if the disc, he had got into a loop, in a mental loop, and that mental loop displayed his anxiety and his frustration. To R.R. Divakar, who was at that time Union Minister of Information and Broadcasting, Nehru wrote, our broadcast should rather tone down the description of what happens at Somnath and not make it appear in any way that it's a governmental function. That same mindset one sees in the Congress today. The Congress leader at the highest level abuse Hindus. They abuse those who go to temples. They have an aversion for temple worship. They have an aversion for Hindu faith. They've always tried to suppress that. This goes back to Nehru. He says, he instructs R.R. Divakar that you tone down the description of what happens in Somnath. Then he writes to Mridula Sarabhai in April 1952, and he says, this business, just see the language, the approach, the denigration. This business of the Somnath temple is giving me much trouble. He writes to the Jam Saheb Digvijay Singh ji, who had written to him, inviting him, saying that I am troubled by this revivalism. It was a tired argument, but again Nehru resorted to it. I am troubled by this revivalism and by the fact that our president and some ministers and you as Raj Pramukh are associated with it. I think that this is not in line with the nature of our state, and it will have bad consequences both nationally and internationally. No consequences. It had only positive consequences. There was no question of having a bad consequence, and all these individuals were involved in their individual capacities. And It was Sardar Patel's wish that Babu Rajendra Prasad, though Sardar Patel passed away before that, come for the Pran Pratishtha there for the ceremony. Nehru writes to Rajendra Prasad on March 2nd, 1951, I confess that I do not like the idea of your associating yourself with a spectacular opening of the Somnath temple. This is not merely visiting a temple, but rather participating in a significant function which unfortunately has a number of implications. And he kept trying to prevent Dr. Rajendra Prasad from attending. Obviously, because the Nehruvian system that Nehru spawned was anti-religious. It had its secularism was qualified by denigration of the Hindus, of the Sanatanis. It wanted a faithless state. It wanted a state which where you saw vikas, where you saw development, but which was not bothered about its virasat. You could let the virasat go to ruins, go to completely get dissolved. The consciousness of having a virasat for Nehru had no meaning in independent India. So, and therefore the Nehruvian establishment, even after the Somnath temple was constructed, tried to suppress that history, tried to suppress its significance, its symbolism, till Prime Minister Narendra Modi decided to commemorate and to signify the symbolism, the deeper symbolism of Somnath, linking it with Vikasit Bharat, linking it with decolonization, with Atmanirbharta, and with the rise of India as a civilizational state. Now, I just also want to just conclude with this wonderful letter, not the entire of it, not the whole portion of it, a portion from K. M. Munshi's letter that he wrote as a response to Nehru's, telling him that it smacks of Hindu revivalism. This is a letter that is available everywhere. I would urge all of you to read it, to quote it, to cite it, and to circulate it. It's a wonderful letter. He concludes, K. M. Munshi concludes that letter by saying, it is my faith, by writing to Nehru, one more word, it is my faith in our past which has given me the strength to work in the present and to look forward to our future. I cannot value freedom if it deprives us of the Bhagavad Gita or uproots our millions from the faith with which they look upon our temple and thereby destroys the texture of our lives. I have been given the privilege of seeing my incessant dream of Somnath reconstruction come true. That makes me almost sure that this shrine, once restored to a place of importance in our life, will give to our people a purer conception of religion and a more vivid consciousness of our strength, so vital in these days of freedom and its trials. And this is a wonderful letter, and V.P. Menon commented on that. V.P. Menon wrote, who was the advisor to the state ministry then, wrote after having read the letter, I have seen your masterpiece. I, for one, would be prepared to live and, if necessary, die by the views you have expressed in your letter. So, friends, it is in this context, in this historic civilizational context, that we need to look at the Somnath Swabhiman Parv. We need to understand and internalize Prime Minister Narendra Modi's appeal, and we need to rekindle the spirit of Somnath, the essence of Somnath, and the symbolism, the deeper symbolism of Somnath in our march towards Vikasit Bharat 2047.